little introductory prayer, just one of my favorite melodies.
Okay. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 15, text 6. Reading reading the Sanskrit and English together. Natad bhasayate suryo nashanko napavakaha yadgatva nanivartante tattama paramang mama. That about translation. That did he really? Okay. I knew it. Okay. Here we go. Oh, this is chapter 16. Okay. Yeah, I remember. Okay. Text chapter 15, text 16. Sanskrit. Dvavimo purusho loke sharaschakshara evacha shara sarvani bhutani kutastokshara uchyate. Translation. There are two classes of beings, the fallible and the infallible. In the material world, every entity is fallible, and in the spiritual world, every entity is called infallible. Text 17. Uttama purushastvanya paramatmetyudahritaha yo lokotrayam avishya bibhartyavyaya ishvaraha. Translation. Besides these two, there is the greatest living personality, the Lord himself, who has entered into these worlds and is maintaining them. Text 18. Yasmat sharam atito ham aksharat apichotamaha atosmi loke vedecha pratita purushotamaha. Translation. Because I am transcendental, beyond both the fallible and the infallible, and because I am the greatest, I am celebrated both in the world and in the Vedas as that supreme person. Text 19. Yo mam eva asamudho janati purushottamam sasarva vidbhajati mang sarva bhavina padata. Translation. Whoever knows me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, without doubting, is to be understood as the knower of everything, and he therefore engages himself in full devotional service, O son of Bharata. Text 20. Iti guhyattamam shastram idam uktam maya nakha etad budhva buddhiman syat krita krityascha bharata. Translation. This is the most confidential part of the Vedic scriptures, also in this one, and it is disclosed now by me. Whoever understands this will become wise, and his endeavors will know perfection. Chapter 16, the Divine and Demoniac Natures. Text 1 through 3. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Abhayang Sattva Sangshutir Jnanam Yoga Vyavastitihi Dhanam Damascha Yagyascha Swadhyayastapa Arjavam Ahingsam Satyam Akrodas Tyaga Shanti Apaishunam Daya Bhuteshwalo Luptvang Mardavam Hirir Achapalam Teja Shama Triti Shocham Adroho Nati Manita Bhavanti Sampadang Daiving Abhijatasya Bharata. Translation. The Blessed Lord said, fearlessness, purification of one's existence, cultivation of spiritual knowledge, charity, self-control, performance of sacrifice, study of the Vedas, austerity and simplicity, non-violence, truthfulness, freedom from anger, renunciation, tranquility, aversion to fault-finding, compassion and freedom from covetousness, gentleness, modesty and steady determination, vigor, forgiveness, fortitude, cleanliness, freedom from envy and the passion for honor. These transcendental qualities, O son of Bharata, belong to godly men endowed with divine natures. Okay. Is it two more? Yeah. Dambodharpa bhimanascha krodha parushyam evacha ajnanam cha bijatasya partha sampadam asurim. Translation: arrogance, pride, anger, conceit, harshness, and ignorance. These qualities belong to the demonic, to those of demonic nature. O son of Pritha. Text 5. Tavi sampad vimokshaya nibandhaya surimata mashucha sampadang daivim abhijatosi pandava. Translation: the transcendental qualities are conducive to liberation, whereas the demonic qualities make for bondage. Do not worry, O son of Pandu, for you are born with the divine qualities. Back to chapter 15, text 16. Okay. Translation: there are two classes of beings, the fallible and the infallible. In the material world, every entity is fallible, and in the spiritual world, every entity is called infallible. If anyone has any comments while I read these purports, feel free to raise your hand so you can get the mic. Purport: as already explained, the Lord in his incarnation as Vyasadeva compiled the Vedanta Sutra. Here the Lord is giving in summary the contents of the Vedanta Sutra. He says that the living entities, who are innumerable, can be divided into two classes, the fallible and the infallible. The living entities are eternally separated parts and parcels of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When they are in contact with the material world, they are called Jiva Bhutaha, and the Sanskrit words given here, Sarvani Bhutani, mean that they are fallible. Those who are in oneness with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, however, are called infallible. Oneness does not mean that they have no individuality, but that there is no disunity. They are all agreeable to the purpose of the creation. Of course, in the spiritual world, there is no such thing as creation. But since the Supreme Personality of Godhead has stated in the Vedanta Sutra that he is the source of all emanation, that conception is explained. According to the statement of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, there are two classes of men. The Vedas give evidence of this, so there is no doubt about it. The living entities, who are struggling in this world with the mind and five senses, have their material bodies, which are changing as long as the living entities are conditioned. One's body changes due to contact with matter. Matter is changing, so the living entity appears to be changing. But in the spiritual world, the body is not made of matter. Therefore, it has no change. Therefore, there is no change. In the material world, the living entity undergoes 6 changes: birth, growth, duration, reproduction, then dwindling, and vanishing. These are the changes of the material body. But in the spiritual world, the body does not change. There is no old age. There is no birth. There is no death. There all exists in oneness. There all exists in oneness. It is more clearly explained as Sarvani Bhutani. Any living entity who has come in contact with matter, beginning from the first created being, Brahma, down to a small ant, is changing its body. Therefore, they are all fallible. In the spiritual world, however, they are always liberated in oneness.
Text 17. Uttama purushastvanya paramatmit yudharitaha yalokatrayam havishya bibhart yavyaya ishvaraha. Translation: besides these two, there is the greatest living personality, the Lord himself, who has entered into these worlds and is maintaining them. Purport: this verse is nicely expressed in the Katha Upanishad and Swata Swatara Upanishad. It is clearly stated that above the innumerable living entities, some of whom are conditioned and some of whom are liberated, there is a Supreme Personality who is Paramatma. The Upasadic verse runs as follows: Nityo Nityanam Chaitanash Chaitananam. The purport is that amongst all the living entities, both conditioned and liberated, there is one supreme living personality, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who maintains them and gives them all the facility of enjoyment according to different work. That Supreme Personality of Godhead is situated in everyone's heart as Paramatma. A wise man who can understand him is eligible to attain the perfect peace, not others. It is incorrect to think of the Supreme Lord and the living entities as being on the same level or equal in all respects. There is always the question of superiority and inferiority in their personalities. This particular word, Uttama, is very significant. No one can surpass the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Loke is also significant because in the Parusha, a Vedic literature, it is stated, Lokyate Vedarto Nena. The Supreme Lord, in his localized aspect of Paramatma, explains the purpose of the Vedas. The following verse also appears in the Vedas. Tavadesha samprasarao smach charirat samutaya param jyoti rupam sampadyasvena rupena vinishpadyate sa uttama purushaha. Quote, the super soul coming out of the body enters the impersonal Brahmajyotir. Then in his form he remains in his spiritual identity. That supreme is called the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This means that the Supreme Personality is exhibiting and diffusing his spiritual effulgence, which is the ultimate illumination. That Supreme Personality also has a localized aspect of Paramatma. Chapter 15, text 17. By incarnating himself as the son of Satyavati and Parashar, he explains the Vedic knowledge as Vyasadeva.
Because I am transcendental beyond both the fallible and the infallible, and because I am the greatest, I am celebrated both in the world and in the Vedas as that Supreme Person. Purport. No one can surpass the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, neither the conditioned soul nor the liberated soul. He is therefore the greatest of personalities. Now it is clear here that the living entities and the Supreme Personality of Godhead are individuals. The difference is that the living entities, either in the conditioned state or in the liberated state, cannot surpass in quantity the inconceivable potencies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Text 19, translation. Whoever knows me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, without doubting, is to be understood as the knower of everything, and he therefore engages himself in full devotional service, O son of Bharata. Purport. There are many philosophical speculations about the constitutional position of the living entities and the Supreme Absolute Truth. Now, in this verse, the Supreme Personality of Godhead clearly explains that anyone who knows Lord Krishna as the Supreme Person is actually the knower of everything. The imperfect knower goes on simply speculating about the absolute truth, but the perfect knower, without wasting his valuable time, engages directly in Krishna consciousness, the devotional service of the Supreme Lord. Throughout the whole of Bhagavad Gita, this fact is being stressed at every step. And still there are so many stubborn commentators on Bhagavad Gita who consider the Supreme Absolute Truth and the living entities to be one and the same. Vedic knowledge is called Shruti, learning by oral reception. One should actually receive the Vedic message from authorities like Krishna and his representatives. Here, Krishna distinguishes everything very nicely, and one should hear from this source. Simply to hear like the hogs is not sufficient. One must be able to understand from the authorities. It is not that one should simply speculate academically. One should submissively hear from Bhagavad Gita that these living entities are always subordinate to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anyone who is able to understand this, according to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, knows the purpose of the Vedas. No one else knows the purpose of the Vedas. The word bhajate is very significant. In many places, the word bhajate is expressed in relationship with the service of the Supreme Lord. If a person is engaged in full Krishna consciousness, in devotional service of the Lord, it is to be understood that he has understood all the Vedic knowledge. In the Vaishnava Parampara, it is said that if one is engaged in the devotional service of Krishna, then there is no need for a spiritual process to understand the supreme absolute truth. He has already come to the post because he is engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. He has ended all preliminary processes of understanding. Similarly, if anyone, after speculating for hundreds of thousands of lives, does not come to the point that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that one has to surrender there, all his speculation for so many years and lives is a useless waste of time.
Hare Krishna. Text 20. Iti guhyatamam shastram idam uktam maya nagha etad buddhva buddhiman syat krita krityascha bharata. Translation. This is the most confidential part of the Vedic scriptures, O sinless one, and it is disclosed now by me. Whoever understands this will become wise, and his endeavors will know perfection. Purport. The Lord clearly explains here that this is the substance of all revealed scriptures, and one should understand this as it is given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus, one will become intelligent and perfect in the transcendental knowledge. In other words, by understanding this philosophy of Supreme Personality of Godhead and engaging in His transcendental service, everyone can become freed from all contaminations of the modes of material nature. Devotional service is the process of spiritual understanding. Wherever devotional service exists, the material contamination cannot exist. Devotional service to the Lord and Lord Himself are one and the same because they are spiritual. The internal energy of the Supreme Lord. The Lord is said to be the sun. The Lord is said to be the sun, and ignorance is called darkness. Where the sun is present, there is no question of darkness. Therefore, whenever devotional service is present under the proper guidance of bona fide spiritual master, there is no question of ignorance. Everyone must take to this consciousness of Krishna and engage in devotional service to become intelligent and purified. Unless one comes to this position of understanding Krishna and engages in devotional service, however intelligent he may be in the estimation of some common man, he is not perfectly intelligent. The word Anagha, by which Arjuna is addressed, is significant. Anagha, O sinless one, means that unless one is freed from all sinful reactions, it is very difficult to understand Krishna. One has to become free from all contamination, all sinful activities. Then he can understand. But devotional service is so pure and potent that once one is engaged in devotional service, he automatically comes to the stage of sinlessness. While performing devotional service in the association of pure devotees in full Krishna consciousness, there are certain things which require to be vanquished altogether. The most important thing one has to surmount is weakness of the heart. The first fall down is caused by the desire to lord it over material nature. Thus, one gives up the transcendental loving service of the Supreme Lord. The second weakness of the heart is that as one increases the propensity of lording it over material nature, he becomes attached to matter and the possessions of matter. The problem of material existence are due to these weakness of the heart. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to the 15th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of Purushottama Yoga, the yoga of the Supreme Person.
Chapter 16, the divine and demoniac natures, text 1 through 3. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Bhayam Sattva Samshutir Jnana Yoga Vyavastitihi Dhanam Damaschaya Gyascha Swadhyayas Tapa Arjavam Himsa Satyam Akrodhas Tyaga Shantirapaisanam Dayabhutesh Alo Luptham Mardavam Hir Achapalam Tejak Shamatriti Shaucham Adroho Natimanita Bhavanti Sampadam Daivim Abhijatasya Bharata. The Blessed Lord said, fearlessness, purification of one's existence, cultivation of spiritual knowledge, charity, self-control, performance of sacrifice, study of the Vedas, austerity and simplicity, nonviolence, truthfulness, freedom from anger, renunciation, tranquility, aversion to fault-finding, compassion, and freedom from covetousness, gentleness, modesty, and steady determination, vigor, forgiveness, fortitude, cleanliness, freedom from envy, and the passion for honor. These transcendental qualities, O son of Bharat, belong to the godly men endowed with divine nature. Purport. In the beginning of the 15th chapter, the banyan tree of this material world was explained. The extra roots coming out of it were compared to the activities of the living entities, some auspicious, some inauspicious. In the 9th chapter, also the devas, or godly, and the asuras, the ungodly, or demons, were explained. Now, according to Vedic rites, activities in the mode of goodness are considered auspicious for progress on the path of liberation, and such activities are known as Deva Prakriti, transcendental by nature. Those who are situated in the transcendental nature make progress on the path of liberation. For those who are acting in the modes of passion and ignorance, on the other hand, there is no possibility of liberation. Either they will have to remain in this material world as human beings, or they will descend among the species of animals or even lower life forms. In the 16th chapter, the Lord explains both the transcendental nature and its attendant qualities, as well as the demoniac nature and its qualities. He also explains the advantages and disadvantages of these qualities. The word abhijatasya, in reference to one born of transcendental qualities or godly tendencies, is very significant. To beget a child in a godly atmosphere is known in the Vedic scriptures as garbhadana samskara. If the parents want a child in the godly qualities, they should follow the 10 principles of the human being. In Bhagavad Gita, we have studied also before that sex life for begetting a good child is Krishna himself. Sex life is not condemned, provided the process is used in Krishna consciousness. Those who are in Krishna consciousness at least should not beget children like cats and dogs, but should beget them so they may become Krishna conscious after birth. That should be the advantage of children born of a father or mother absorbed in Krishna consciousness. The social institution known as Varnashrama Dharma, the institution dividing society into 4 divisions or castes, is not meant to divide human society according to birth. Such divisions are in terms of educational qualifications. They are to keep the society in a state of peace and prosperity. The qualities mentioned herein are explained as transcendental qualities meant for making a person progress in spiritual understanding so he can get liberated from the material world. In the Varnashrama institution, the sannyasi, or the person in the renounced order of life, is considered to be the head or the spiritual master of all the social statuses and orders. A brahmana is considered to be the spiritual master of the 3 other sections of a society, namely the kshatriyas, the vaishyas, and the shudras. But a sannyasi who is on the top of the institution is considered to be the spiritual master of the brahmanas also. For a sannyasi, the first qualification should be fearlessness, because the sannyasi has to be alone without any support or guarantee of support. He has simply to depend on the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If he thinks, quote, after leaving my connections, who will protect me? Quote, he should not accept the renounced order of life. One must be fully convinced that Krishna, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in his localized aspect as Paramatma, is always within, that he is seeing everything, and he always knows what one intends to do. One must thus have firm conviction that Krishna, known as Paramatma, will take care of a soul surrendered to him. Quote, I shall never be alone. Quote, one should think. Quote, even if I live in the darkest regions of a forest, I shall be accompanied by Krishna, and he will give me all protection. End quote. That conviction is called abhayam, without fear. This state of mind is necessary for a person in the renounced order of life. Then he has to purify his existence. There are so many rules and regulations to be followed in the renounced order of life. Most important of all, a sannyasi is strictly forbidden to have any intimate relationship with a woman.
He is even forbidden to talk with a woman in a secluded place. Lord Chaitanya was an ideal sannyasi, and when he was at Puri, his feminine devotees could not even come near to offer their respects. They were advised to bow down from a distant place. This is not a sign of hatred for women as a class, but it is a stricture imposed on the sannyasi not to have close connections with women. One has to follow the rules and regulations of a particular status of life in order to purify his existence. For a sannyasi, intimate relations with women and possessions of wealth for sense gratification are strictly forbidden. The ideal sannyasi was Lord Chaitanya himself, and we can learn from his life that he was very strict in regards to women. Although he is considered to be the most liberal incarnation of Godhead, accepting the most fallen conditioned souls, he strictly followed the rules and regulations of the sannyas order of the life in connection with association with women. One of his personal associates, namely Chota Haridas, was personally associated with Lord Chaitanya, along with his other confidential personal associates. But somehow or other, this Chota Haridas looked lustily on a young woman, and Lord Chaitanya was so strict that he at once rejected him from the society of his personal associates. Lord Chaitanya said, for a sannyasi or anyone who is aspiring to get out of the clutches of material nature and trying to elevate himself to the spiritual nature and go back to home, back to Godhead, for him, looking toward material possessions and women for sense gratification, not even enjoying them, but just looking towards them with such a propensity, is so condemned that he had better commit suicide before experiencing such illicit desires. So these are the processes for purification. The next item is Jnana Yoga Vyavastitihi, being engaged in the cultivation of knowledge. Being engaged in the cultivation of knowledge. Sannyasi life is meant for distributing knowledge to the householders and others who have forgotten their real life of spiritual advancement. A sannyasi is supposed to beg from door to door for his livelihood, but this does not mean that he is a beggar. Humility is also one of the qualifications of a transcendentally situated person. And out of sheer humility, the sannyasi goes from door to door, not exactly for the purpose of begging, but to see the householders and awaken them to Krishna consciousness. This is the duty of a sannyasi. If he is actually advanced and so ordered by his spiritual master, he should preach Krishna consciousness with logic and understanding. And if he is not so advanced, he should not accept the renounced order of life. But even if he has accepted the renounced order of life without sufficient knowledge, he should engage himself fully in hearing from a bona fide spiritual master to cultivate knowledge. A sannyasi, or one in the renounced order of life, must be situated in fearlessness, sattva sangshuddhihi, purity, and jnana yoga, knowledge. The next item is charity. Charity is meant for the householders. The householders should earn a livelihood by an honorable means and spend 50% of their income to propagate Krishna consciousness all over the world. Thus, a householder should give in charity to such institutional societies that are engaged in that way. Charity should be given to the right receiver. There are different kinds of charities, as will be explained later on. Charity in the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance. Charity in the mode of goodness is recommended by the scriptures, but charity in the modes of passion and ignorance is not recommended, because it is simply a waste of time. Charity should be given only to propagate Krishna consciousness all over the world. That is charity in the mode of goodness.
Then, as far as Dhamma, self-control, is concerned, it is not only meant for other orders of religious society, but it is especially meant for the householder. Although he has a wife, a householder should not use his senses for sex life unnecessarily. There are restrictions for the householders even in sex life, which should only be engaged in for the propagation of children. If he does not require children, he should not enjoy sex life with his wife. Modern society enjoys sex life with contraceptive methods or more abominable methods to avoid the responsibility of children. This is not in the transcendental quality, but is demoniac. If anyone, even if he is a householder, wants to make progress in spiritual life, he must control his sex life and should not beget a child without the purpose of serving Krishna. If he is able to beget children who will be in Krishna consciousness, one can produce hundreds of children. But without this capacity, one should not indulge only for sense pleasure. Sacrifice is another item to be performed by the householders because sacrifices require a large amount of money. Other orders of life, namely the brahmacharya, the vanaprastha, and sannyasa, have no money. They live by begging. So performance of different types of sacrifice is meant for the householder. They should perform Agnihotra sacrifices as enjoined in the Vedic literature, but such sacrifices at the present moment are very expensive, and it is not possible for any householder to perform them. The best sacrifice recommended in this age is called Sankirtan Yagya, the chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This is the best and most inexpensive sacrifice. Everyone can adopt it and derive benefit. So these three items, namely charity, sense control, and performance of sacrifice, are meant for the householder. Then Swadhyaya, Vedic study, and tapas, austerity, and arjavam, gentleness or simplicity, are meant for the brahmacharya or student life. The brahmacharis should have no connection with women. They should live a life of celibacy and engage the mind in the study of Vedic literature for cultivation of spiritual knowledge. This is called Swadhyaya. Tapas or austerity is especially meant for the retired life. One should not remain a householder throughout his whole life. He must always remember that there are four divisions of life: brahmacharya, grihastha, vanaprastha, and sannyas. So after grihastha, the householder life, one should retire. If one lives for 100 years, he should spend 25 years in student life, 25 in householder life, 25 in retired life, and 25 in the renounced order of life. These are the regulations of the Vedic religious discipline. A man retired from household life must practice austerities of the body, mind, and tongue. That is tapasya. The entire Varnashram Dharma society is meant for tapasya. Without tapasya or austerity, no human being can get liberation. The theory that there is no need of austerity in life, that one can go on speculating and everything will be nice, is neither recommended in the Vedic literature nor in Bhagavad Gita. Such theories are manufactured by show bottle spiritualists who are trying to gather more followers. If there are restrictions, rules, and regulations, people will not become attracted. Therefore, those who want followers in the name of religion just to have a show only don't restrict the lives of their students, nor their own lives. But that method is not approved by the Vedas. As far as simplicity is concerned, not only should a particular order of life follow this principle, but every member, be he in the Brahmacharya ashram or Grihastha ashram or Vanaprastha ashram, one must live very simply. Ahimsa means not arresting the progressive life of any living entity.
Hare Krishna. Ahimsa means not arresting the progressive life of any living entity. One should not think that since the spirit spark is never killed, even after the killing of the body, there is no harm in killing animals for sense gratification. People are now addicted to eating animals in spite of having ample supply of grains, fruits and milk. There is no necessity for animal killing. This injunction is for everyone. When there is no alternative, one may kill an animal, but it should be offered in sacrifice. At any rate, when there is an ample food supply for humanity, persons who are desiring to make advancement in spiritual realization should not commit violence to animals. Real ahimsa means not checking anyone's progressive life. The animals are also making progress in their evolutionary life by transmigrating from one category of animal life to another. If a particular animal is killed, then his progress is checked. If an animal is staying in a particular body for so many days or so many years and is untimely killed, then he has to come back again in that form of life to complete the remaining days in order to be promoted to another species of life. So, their progress should not be checked simply to satisfy one's palate. This is called ahimsa, satyam. This word means that one should not distort the truth for some personal interest. In Vedic literature, there are some difficult passages, but the meaning or the purpose should be learned from a bona fide spiritual master. That is the process of understanding, that is the process for understanding Vedas. Shruti means that one should hear from the authority. One should not construe some interpretation for his personal interest. There are so many commentaries on Bhagavad Gita that misinterpret the original text. The real import of the word should be presented, and that should be learned from a bona fide spiritual master. Akrodha means to check anger. Even if there is provocation, one should be tolerant. For once one becomes angry, his whole body becomes polluted. Anger is the product of the modes of passion and lust. So, one who is transcendentally situated should check himself from anger. Apeshunam means that one should not find fault with others or correct them unnecessarily. Of course, to call a thief is not fault finding, but to call an honest person a thief is very much offensive for one who is making advancement in spiritual life. Hri means that one should be very modest and must not perform some act which is abominable. Achapalam, achapalam, determination means that one should not be agitated or frustrated in some attempt. There may be failure in some attempt, but one should not be sorry for that. He should make progress with patience and determination. The word teja used here is meant for the Kshatriyas. The Kshatriyas should always be very strong to be able to give protection to the weak. They should not pose themselves as non-violent. If violence is required, they must exhibit it. Saucham means cleanliness, not only in mind and body, but in one's dealings also. It is especially meant for the mercantile people who should not deal in the black market. Nati manita, not expecting honor, applies to the Shudras, the worker class, which is considered, according to the Vedic injunctions, to be the lowest of the four classes. They should not be puffed up with unnecessary prestige or honor and should remain in their own status. It is the duty of the Shudras to offer respect to the higher classes for the upkeep of the social order. All these 16 qualifications mentioned are transcendental qualities. They should be cultivated according to the different statuses of the social order. The purport is that even though material conditions are miserable, if these qualities are developed by practice by all classes of men, then gradually it is possible to rise to the highest platform of transcendental realization.
Text 4. Arrogance, pride, anger, conceit, harshness, and ignorance. These qualities belong to those of demonic nature, O son of Pritha. In this verse, the royal road to hell is described. The demoniac want to make a show of religion and advancement in spiritual science. Although they do not follow the principles, they are always arrogant or proud in possessing some type of education or so much wealth. They desire to be worshipped by others and demand respectability, although they do not command respect. Over trifles, they become very angry and speak harshly, not gently. They do not know what should be done and what should not be done. They do everything whimsically, according to their own desire, and they do not recognize any authority. These demoniac qualities are taken on by them from the beginning of their bodies in the wombs of their mothers, and as they grow, they manifest all these inauspicious qualities. Bhagavad Gita ki jai.